It was a quiet dawn in southern France, June 8, 1873. A poor vineyard worker named Auguste Arnaud rose before sunrise, as he always did, to tend the vines that fed his family. The earth was still cool, the sky streaked with pale gold. He lit his small pipe, sat on the ground, and sighed, unaware that this would be the morning that would change his life and deliver a message from heaven that still echoes across the centuries. Because on that ordinary Sunday, amid the rows of grapevines and the song of the birds, the Virgin Mary appeared, radiant, crowned, and wrapped in a white veil. She came not with thunder or miracles, but with a mother's voice, warning humanity of a danger that had only begun. This is the story of Our Lady of Sunday, a forgotten apparition that revealed how the smallest act of disobedience can open the door to the greatest spiritual fall. In the small village of Saint-Bauzile-de-la-Sylve, in the south of France, life in the 19th century was not easy. The year was 1873, a time when France was recovering from war, famine, and growing hostility toward the church. Religion, for many, was becoming a thing of the past. People spoke of progress, machines, and the new, modern man. But in this quiet countryside, one man still lived close to the earth, to his family, and to his faith. His name was Auguste Arnaud, born on March 12, 1843, the son of poor farmers. From a young age, Auguste's life had been marked by suffering. His mother, Thérèse Anne, was injured before his birth, and her health never recovered. As a boy, Auguste had to care for her every day, missing school to fetch water, tend animals, and help her walk. When she died in 1862, Auguste was only 19. It was the deepest wound of his life, yet he never lost his faith. The villagers admired his kindness, his humility, and his strength. A few years later, he married Alix Lucy Dormez, and together they had 6 children. But tragedy struck again. 3 of them died young, one at just 11 years old. For Auguste and Alix, life was a long series of trials, poverty, illness, and grief, yet they never cursed heaven. Auguste earned his living as a day laborer, hired by other farmers to work their land. But he also owned a tiny vineyard of his own, where he grew grapes to feed his family and make wine. And like most farmers of that time, Sunday was not always a day of rest. He often rose early to care for his vines before Mass. In his mind, this was not a sin. He worked only so that his children would not go hungry. He was a man of simple heart and honest faith. But heaven was watching closely. It was Sunday, June 8th, 1873. At 5 in the morning, Auguste walked through the fields of Saint-Bauzile-de-la-Sylve. The first light of dawn fell softly on the vineyards. The air smelled of soil and dew. He worked for 2 hours, pruning, tying vines, and checking for disease. His thoughts were heavy that day. A plague called phylloxera, a tiny insect that destroyed vines, had begun spreading across France. Entire harvests were being wiped out. If it reached Saint-Bauzile, families like his would lose everything. He paused to rest, sitting on a low stone wall. The morning was still. He pulled out his pipe, watching the thin smoke rise against the golden sky. Then, something changed. A brilliant light appeared in front of him, a halo, glowing brighter than the sun, yet soft and pure. From within that light stepped a woman of extraordinary beauty, clothed in white, her head crowned, her hands crossed over her chest. A long white veil flowed down to her feet. Auguste froze. His pipe fell from his hands. For a moment, he could not breathe. Then, trembling, he spoke in his local dialect, the old Occitan patois of southern France. "Who are you?" The lady smiled gently and replied in the same dialect, "I am the Blessed Virgin. Do not be afraid." The Virgin's face was filled with light, but her voice carried sadness, the sadness of a mother who sees her children drifting away. She said to him, "You have vine disease. You have abandoned Saint Bosso. You must celebrate his feast day on Thursday. You must go to Saint Antoine in procession and say Mass there. From today in 15 days, all must go in procession to Notre-Dame, the cantons of Gignac, Montpellier, and Lodève. You must plant a new cross and change the other. You will place a cross with a virgin at the bottom of your vineyard, and you will come there in procession every year. Go tell your father and your priest right away. In a month, I will come to thank you." Then the Virgin rose straight into the air, surrounded by a globe of light, and disappeared into the sky. Auguste remained still, staring upward as the glow faded. His heart pounded. He had no doubt. He had seen the Mother of God. Auguste dropped his tools, left the vineyard, and hurried home, his face pale but peaceful. He told his father everything: the light, the lady, her words. His father, who knew Auguste as a man incapable of lying, was deeply moved.
"Then you must do what she asked,"
he said softly. "Go to the priest." But when Auguste went to the parish priest, Father Coste, he met disbelief. The young priest had only arrived 2 months earlier. He didn't know Auguste well. He listened, frowning, and finally said,
"These claims, I just cannot believe them."
"The Virgin would not ask for disobedience to our bishop, nor would she appear to someone working on the Lord's day." Auguste replied gently, "Father, I do not disobey God. I work early on Sunday so I can attend Mass. I never miss it." But the priest shook his head.
"I'm sorry. Please keep this to yourself, and all will be good."
Even as he was dismissed, Auguste remained calm. "I only came because the Blessed Virgin asked me to tell you," he said. "I know what I saw. She promised she would return, and I believe her." Then he bowed and left quietly. The next morning, Auguste went to the carpenter and ordered the new cross the Virgin had requested. That same evening, he replaced the old one in his vineyard with a simple wooden cross. But he wanted something more worthy of her, so he ordered a wrought iron cross with a statue of the Virgin from Montpellier, spending nearly all his savings. The villagers soon heard of his story. Some laughed. Others were moved. To most, he was a good man, too good. And then something strange happened. A cart driver, hired to deliver the stone base for the new cross, mocked Auguste loudly on his way to the vineyard. "So this is where your Virgin lies," he shouted, laughing. But as he spoke, his horses suddenly stopped dead in their tracks. They refused to move. The driver whipped them, begged them nothing. An old woman nearby whispered, "Perhaps you should apologize to the Virgin." Embarrassed, the man raised his eyes and said aloud, "Forgive me, Blessed Mother. I meant no disrespect." At once, the horses began walking calmly again. The driver turned pale. He said nothing more. By Thursday, June 12th, Auguste fulfilled another of the Virgin's requests. He went in pilgrimage to the hermitage of Saint Antoine, then to Notre-Dame de Graces in Gignac, where he prayed the entire morning. Those who accompanied him were astonished by his devotion. He had done everything she asked. Now all that remained was to wait for her return. 4 weeks passed. In the village of Saint Basil de la Sylve, whispers spread from home to home. Some mocked the farmer who claimed to have spoken to the Virgin Mary. Others defended him, saying that a man as humble and honest as Auguste Arnaud could never lie. But Auguste himself said nothing. He simply worked, prayed, and waited, certain that the lady would return on the day she had promised. July 8th, 1873. In the days leading up to July 8th, people began to notice something remarkable about Auguste. He was calm, peaceful, unmoved by fear or pride. When asked if he truly believed the Virgin would return, he would answer with the simplicity of a child. "Of course she will. She said she would. The Blessed Virgin does not lie." His wife, Alex Lucy, however, was filled with anxiety. She worried that if nothing happened, the entire village would ridicule them, that her husband would lose his work, or worse, be accused of blasphemy. But Auguste only smiled gently and said, "If the Virgin comes, all will be well. If she does not, I will still praise God." To him, faith was not a feeling. It was certainty, a quiet strength that does not need proof. When dawn broke on July 8th, the fields of St. Basil were already stirring with unusual activity. Dozens of villagers walked toward Auguste's vineyard, some praying the rosary, others curious, and a few skeptical. By sunrise, hundreds had gathered among the vines. Even journalists and travelers from nearby towns came to see if the man of the vineyard was a fool or a prophet. Auguste arrived early, as always, carrying his tools. Beside him walked his friend Jalabert, who had come to work with him and to witness whatever might happen. At around 7 a.m., the air was still and heavy with anticipation. The crowd murmured in low voices. Some whispered prayers, others watched in silence. Then Auguste said quietly to his friend, "I think it will be like before. Around this time, the Virgin is never late." And with that, he bent down to continue his work among the vines. As the hour reached 7:30, Jalabert suddenly noticed something strange. Auguste's pickaxe slipped from his hands. His body stiffened, his eyes wide open, fixed on the sky. He slowly removed his hat, as though standing before a great and holy presence. Then, in front of everyone, his body began to rise, lifted by invisible hands, and was carried swiftly across the vineyard toward the new wrought iron cross he had erected. The crowd gasped. Witnesses would later swear that Auguste seemed to glide above the ground, as if the earth itself had released him. Even if he had run, no human could have moved that fast through the thick vines without falling. When he stopped before the cross, he knelt down, his face radiant, his eyes lifted upward. Many in the crowd began to weep. Though they saw nothing of the apparition itself, they could feel something in the air, a peace so profound, so powerful, it silenced every tongue. After several minutes, Auguste began to speak softly. His voice trembled, but his words were clear. "She is here, the Virgin is here." Then, turning his gaze upward, his lips moved silently in prayer. Those closest to him saw his face glow with joy, as though illuminated from within. Later, Auguste described what he saw. 2 meters before me, the Virgin appeared again. Then suddenly, she was above the cross. Her garments were no longer white, they were golden, shining with light. Her face was radiant. She held a golden rosary in her left hand, and with her right, she blessed us all. Then the Virgin spoke to him, "You must not work on Sunday. Blessed is he who believes, and unhappy is he who does not believe. You must go to Notre-Dame du Dimanche in procession. You will be happy with your whole family." After these words, she gently slid her rosary from her left hand, blessed the crowd with her right, and said, "Let hymns be sung." Then she rose above the cross, surrounded by a sphere of golden light, and vanished. As the light faded, Auguste's body relaxed, and he slowly returned to himself. Pale and trembling, he looked around, as though waking from a deep dream. Those near him rushed to support him, but he only said in a faint voice, "Tell them to sing." Immediately, the crowd began to sing the Magnificat, the ancient hymn of Mary's praise. Their voices filled the vineyard like a river of sound. Men, women, and children sang with tears in their eyes. When the hymn ended, another began spontaneously, then another. No one wanted to leave. No one wanted to speak of anything else. Though no one except Auguste had seen the Virgin, everyone had felt her presence, and they had seen with their own eyes what could not be explained. A man lifted and carried by invisible power, his face transformed by joy, and a peace that lingered long after the vision ended. In the following days, pilgrims flooded to Saint Basil de la Sylve. They came from Montpellier, Lodève, and Gignac, carrying candles, praying rosaries, and kneeling before the cross where heaven had touched the earth. For weeks, the sound of prayer never stopped. Many brought their sick relatives, leaving flowers and small wooden crosses as offerings. Some even took soil from the vineyard as a keepsake, believing it had been blessed by the Virgin's presence. But not everyone rejoiced. Father Coste, the same priest who had dismissed Auguste, was troubled. He knew he could not ignore the growing devotion, but he feared ridicule or censure from his bishop. For 2 years, he said nothing officially. But in 1875, a new bishop arrived, Monseigneur de Cabrieres, a man deeply devoted to the Virgin Mary. When he heard of what had happened, he traveled to Saint Basil himself to meet Auguste. The bishop found not a fanatic, but a man of quiet dignity, humble, honest, and unwavering. He questioned Auguste carefully, asked him to repeat the story many times, even tried to catch him in contradictions. But Auguste never changed a single detail. He spoke simply, without exaggeration, and with the same peace he had shown from the beginning. Monseigneur de Cabrieres was moved. He ordered a canonical investigation, sending theologians and witnesses to gather testimony. They examined every aspect of the apparition, its message, its fruits, and the character of the seer. The conclusion: nothing contrary to the faith had occurred. The devotion to Our Lady of Sunday could continue. Over time, the place of the apparition became a sanctuary. A small chapel was built near the vineyard, and in 1893, Franciscan nuns came to care for it. Pilgrims began to call the place Notre-Dame du Dimanche, Our Lady of Sunday. The name carried a message that went far beyond one village. It was a reminder to the entire world that the Lord's Day is sacred, that rest, prayer, and family are not luxuries,
Then you must
but
do
divine
what she
gifts.
asked.
Auguste himself remained a man of poverty. He never used his story for profit, never sought fame. He continued to live simply, refusing to work on Sundays, even when poverty pressed hard upon him. When offered money to break this rule, he refused, saying only, "The Blessed Virgin forbade me.
These claims,
Should I
I
starve,
just cannot believe
I will
them.
still keep my promise." As France entered the 20th century, times grew harder for believers. New laws tried to push the church out of public life. Religious orders were expelled, crosses removed from schools, and priests insulted in the streets. But in the quiet vineyards of Saint Basil, pilgrims still
sorry.
came praying before the cross
Please keep this to
that the
yourself,
world had
and all will be
nearly
good.
forgotten. Auguste Arnaud lived to be 92 years old, passing away on February 8, 1936. His final words were a hymn, "I will go see her one day." He was buried by special permission in the very field where the Virgin had appeared to him 63 years earlier. On his tomb, the inscription reads, "At the feet of the Virgin, whom he so loved and so faithfully served, here rests, awaiting the blessed resurrection, the body of Auguste Arnaud, piously asleep in the peace of the Lord." When the Virgin Mary appeared to Auguste Arnaud, she came not to terrify or to perform a great public miracle. She came quietly in a vineyard, at dawn to speak to one humble man about the simplest of commandments. Remember to keep holy the Lord's Day. To many, it seemed a small request, but hidden within those words was a warning for the entire modern age, a prophecy that would unfold not only in France, but across the whole world. At first glance, the message of Our Lady of Sunday may appear almost too simple. She didn't speak of wars, disasters, or the end of the world. She spoke about Sunday, the day meant for rest, prayer, and family. But that was precisely the point. By the late 19th century, a new world was being born, one where machines, factories, and the chase for profit were beginning to replace faith, silence, and the rhythm of worship. In 1873, when the Virgin appeared, France was stepping into the Industrial Revolution. Workshops and factories no longer stopped for mass. Men, women, and even children labored on Sundays. The sacred day of God was slowly being erased. The Blessed Virgin, appearing in that vineyard, was giving the world one final reminder. If humanity forgot God in its pursuit of gain, it would destroy not only its soul, but its peace. To understand the depth of this message, we must look at the setting the Virgin chose, a vineyard. Throughout Scripture, the vineyard is one of God's most powerful symbols. In the Gospel of Mark, Christ tells the parable of the unfaithful vinedressers. A man planted a vineyard, surrounded it with a hedge, dug a winepress, and built a tower. Then he leased it to tenants and went on a journey. When the season came, he sent his servants to collect his share. But they seized them, beat them, and killed them. Finally, he sent his beloved son, and they said, "Here is the heir. Let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." The vineyard represents the world that God has entrusted to us, and the vinedressers are humanity itself. We are caretakers, not owners. But when we begin to think the world belongs to us, when we no longer honor the Lord who made it, we become like those who killed the son and stole the vineyard. So when Mary appeared in a vineyard stricken by disease, she wasn't only speaking about vines. She was speaking about humanity's spiritual sickness, the same sickness that begins when we replace prayer with ambition, faith with greed, and love with self-interest. Another crucial part of the Virgin's message was her call to honor Saint Basil, the patron of the village. Most people had forgotten him entirely, yet his name was carved into the very soil of the land. Saint Basil was one of the first evangelizers of southern France in the early centuries of Christianity. He died as a martyr, beheaded by pagans, while trying to stop a human sacrifice. By asking Auguste to restore devotion to Saint Basil, the Virgin reminded the people of their roots, of the men and women who had shed their blood so that France could be Christian. And she reminds us too. Our faith was not born from comfort. It was built on sacrifice, courage, and memory. To forget our saints is to forget the path that led us to Christ. When the Virgin said, "You must not work on Sunday," she wasn't condemning labor itself. She was warning against the idolatry of labor, the moment when work ceases to serve the human soul and instead enslaves it. During the industrial age, people began to believe that progress alone could save humanity, that science, machines, and wealth would replace the need for God. But the Virgin saw where this road would lead: to exhaustion, loneliness, and moral collapse. What was once a sacred rhythm of 6 days of labor and one of rest was now becoming a cycle without pause, a race that never ends. And this, she warned, would rob humanity of its peace. Look at the world today. Cities that never sleep. Workers chained to screens long after dark. Children who grow up without seeing their parents pray or rest. We call it productivity. But heaven calls it forgetfulness. The Virgin's words echo, even louder, now than they did in 1873. Blessed is he who believes, and unhappy is he who does not believe. Those who believe still know that life is not measured by how much we produce, but by how much we love. After the apparitions, Auguste Arnaud lived quietly, never seeking fame or fortune. But through his obedience, something powerful took root not in the earth, but in the hearts of those who heard his story. In 1893, the small chapel built on the site of the apparition welcomed the Franciscan sisters, who cared for the pilgrims that came daily. They called the place Notre-Dame du Dimanche, Our Lady of Sunday. Every year, processions continued in honor of the Virgin's message. The people sang hymns, prayed the rosary, and gave thanks for the peace that still filled that vineyard. And though the church never formally declared the apparition supernatural, it allowed public devotion, a quiet recognition that something truly holy had taken place there. For those who came in faith, the message was simple. To honor God one day a week is to remind ourselves that all 7 days belong to Him. Now, more than 150 years later, the story of Our Lady of Sunday has nearly faded into obscurity. Few remember the name of Saint Basil de la Sylve. Fewer still remember the peasant who saw the Virgin among the vines. Yet her warning could not be more relevant. We live in an age that no longer rests. Even on Sundays, stores are open, workers rush, and families drift apart in silence. The sound of prayer is drowned out by the noise of endless productivity. And just as the Virgin warned, when humanity forgets to rest in God, it begins to destroy itself. Anxiety, depression, and burnout now plague the modern world more than hunger ever did. People are wealthier, yet emptier, connected by technology, yet lonelier than ever before. The vineyard of the world is once again diseased not by insects this time, but by the restless spirit of pride. The Blessed Virgin foresaw this, and through a humble man in a forgotten French village, she gave us the cure. Remember the day of the Lord. Keep it holy. Rest, pray, and love. When Auguste was near the end of his life, those who visited him said his face shone with serenity. He never doubted what he had seen. Even in old age, when his hands trembled and his voice grew weak, he would still go to the vineyard to pray before the cross. He had kept his promise never to work on Sunday again. He died in peace, humming the hymn, "I will go see her one day." Perhaps that is the truest summary of this entire story. A poor man who gave up his Sunday work for the love of God and found in return an eternal rest that no hardship could take away. The world may forget him, but heaven never forgets those who obey out of love. Even today, pilgrims who visit Notre-Dame du Dimanche describe an atmosphere of deep peace. The old wrought iron cross still stands, surrounded by flowers. The small chapel remains open, its candles burning softly against the stone walls. And when the wind moves through the vineyards, it sounds almost like a whisper, as if the Virgin's words still echo through the leaves. You must not work on Sunday. Blessed is he who believes. She was not simply talking to Auguste Arnaud. She was talking to all of us, to a world that has forgotten silence, faith, and the joy of stopping. For when we refuse to rest, we tell God that we can live without Him. And that is the greatest illusion of all. Imagine your life as a vineyard, fragile, living, needing care. Every day, you work among the rows, pruning and planting, chasing the sun. But even the earth itself must rest, or it becomes barren. So must the soul. Our Lady of Sunday calls us back to the rhythm that was written into creation itself. 6 days for labor, 1 for love, 6 for the world, 1 for heaven. That is how humanity remains in harmony with God. That is how peace is preserved. The Virgin's message, forgotten by history, is in truth a prophecy fulfilled before our eyes. A world that never stops is a world that forgets why it exists. And so, the Lady of the Vineyard still waits patient, merciful, radiant in light, whispering to every restless heart, "Come back to my son. Rest, believe, and you will find peace again."